they just invented fuck off heavy rock, you know, just rock that you just want to shout to.
You really got me going, you got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, you really got me now, you got me so I can't sleep at night. Yeah, you really got me now, you got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Oh yeah, you really got me now, you got me so I can't sleep at night. You really got me, you really got me, you really got me.
The Kinks were really the first band, the first British band to experiment with what's now referred to as distortion.
Yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night.
They played with an abandon and wildness, particularly in their early days, which you know, was striking.
You really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night. You really got me. You really got me. You really got me.
The story of rock music would be very different without the Kinks. Along with a select band of stellar British groups in the 60s, the Beatles, the Stones and the Who, the Kinks expanded the vocabulary of rock and roll, what you could say and how you could say it. The Kinks emerged from the pop group frenzy that engulfed Britain and America in the mid-60s to make some of the finest, most distinctively British pop songs of the decade, thanks to the songwriting genius of Ray Davies, whose cleverly observed character studies of English society produced a string of memorable hits.
Dirty old river, must you keep rolling, flowing into the night.
As a band, the Kinks have always been a volatile mixture, mainly due to the competitive sibling rivalry between Ray Davies and his brother Dave. This rivalry has contributed to both the band's strengths and weaknesses. It repeatedly damaged their chances of emulating the phenomenal success of bands like the Rolling Stones and the Who, particularly during the 70s and 80s. But at the same time, it has given the band a special edge that has always made them compelling to watch and to listen to. In a very real sense, the Kinks are family. You have to love them despite their faults and foibles.
Well, the Kinks in early 1965 were the third most powerful group in Britain, after the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. They were third place, possibly even tried to edge out the Stones. The Kinks story is kind of self-destructive in a way, and they never quite aspired to these things that they had the chance to do.
There is no doubt in my mind that the Kinks are one of the most astonishingly underestimated rock bands of all time. And a part of the reason for it, and a part of the reason that they haven't become as huge as the Rolling Stones and the Who and the Beatles, and their success doesn't mirror that, is exactly this fractious nature, this fighting that went on within and without the band. That's what held them back in a global sense. But at the same time, it was a part of what fueled the creative instinct that Ray Davies worked from for his songs.
It's a sibling rivalry thing, I think. Look at Oasis now. You've got the Gallagher brothers going at each other ham and tongs half the time, haven't you? Well, it was the same with Ray and Dave. There may well have been a good deal of rivalry there. After all, Dave, he was the lead singer, he wrote the songs, and the focus was always really on Ray. So Dave, the little brother, got pissed off, you know, wouldn't you?
It was a strange combination, the Davies brothers, really. They were always a contradiction in terms, because Ray always sounded to me like a kind of folk rock singer. Dave was an out-and-out rock and roll guitarist and looked like he was holding himself back the whole time from what he was really going to do. And yet, together they kind of worked.
So let's take a look at the Kinks in performance across the decades from the 60s through the 80s and see how their unique and complex chemistry has shaped the band over the years. We start with the two smash hits that catapulted the Kinks into the spotlight in the autumn of 1964. You Really Got Me, which topped the British charts, and All Day and All the Night, which reached number 2, are closely related musically, which is why the Kinks often segued the two songs together in performance.
Oh yeah, you really got me now. Got me so I can't sleep at night. You
You Really Got Me is the key moment in pop's transition into rock, and it's the blueprint for what became heavy metal and heavy rock and punk rock. So everything from that point, everything really stems from that point. So they invented what we know as heavy rock today, and what mutated into all these forms of music just from that 3-minute pop single.
It's such a precise riff. It's very simple riff to play. Punk was very simple, and so was a lot of heavy metal. Also at the time, it was extremely noisy and it was breaking down barriers. Guitar solo in the middle is outrageous for the time. It's far in advance of everything the Beatles were doing. The Who hadn't quite arrived yet, and the Stones couldn't manage a noise like that. So it stands to reason that it's lasted the way it has. It's probably why Ray still closes his concerts with a version of that song.
It's the cliche of the amps being turned up to 11. You know, they were the first people, you know, a lot of records around at that time, people like the Beatles, even the Stones, they were actually quite kind of polite, sedate records. And they were records that, it's a dangerous record. And at that time, you know, everyone was talking about holding hands. And this record is a sexual mission statement, you know, and it sounds like what it is. So the sound actually reflects what they're talking about. You know, it is a ferocious record, and I don't think you could ever better that record. I think you know, you could look at the archetypal heavy rock bands like Led Zeppelin, and then going into everything that came from Led Zeppelin. It all traces back to You Really Got Me.
Don't ever set me free. I always wanna be by your side. Yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night.
They certainly evolved over the years. You Really Got Me got longer for a while. And then in the early 70s, when they incorporated a brass section, because Ray was doing his theatrical projects, You Really Got Me was rather incongruously incorporated into the Kinks set at the time. Caused a lot of problems within the Kinks, actually. I remember John Gosling, the pianist, wasn't too happy with it. He said that whole period was like being in an amateur dramatic society. And there was You Really Got Me, which is the quintessential guitar song, with brass all over it. It seems a strange mix, but it is fascinating to look back and hear it in that strange context at that time.
You got me so I can't sleep at night. Yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Oh yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night. You really got me. You really got me. You really got me.
What is quite interesting is when you listen to or see the version of You Really Got Me that you have on film, is the way that the song can be expanded. I mean, it's very different in that it works very well with the brass section, and Ray is actually expanding the song into a kind of different context. It makes it just as valid but different. You know, it could almost be a hit all over again. This is a very different version that you see on the screen, and it works just as well. It's just as dynamic but different. It's a kind of got a big band feel to it, and it shows really how clever Ray Davies is as a songwriter, because the ambiguity with which he writes enables him to change the songs and give them different inflections. He always wrote in a different kind of way from anybody else.
You really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night.
All Day and All of the Night takes the same riff as You Really Got Me and rings just enough changes to make it a different song, while emphasising that it's been sculpted from the same slab of granite rock.
I'm not content to be with you in the daytime.
Arguably, it's a better song than You Really Got Me, but it was kept off the top spot on the UK charts by the Rolling Stones and the Supremes. Even when they deliver the songs with a brass section, and with Ray Davies playing the role of a frontman, the basic power of the songs are impossible to deny. And the kick the Kinks continue to get from playing them is all too obvious.
I'm not content to be with you in the daytime.
The Kinks' second single, All Day and All of the Night, was very similar to You Really Got Me, except it had an extra chord, which made it slightly more difficult to play, but not too difficult. So there's lots of other garage bands, lots of bands, that's kids who were learning to play and couldn't master a lot of chords. Kinks' songs were easy to play from this point of view. Personally, I prefer All Day and All of the Night because it's just got that touch of extra melody about it.
The only time I feel alright is by your side. 'Cause I want to be with you all of the time, all day and all of the night. All day and all of the night. All day and all of the night.
In one sense it's completely the same as You Really Got Me, and in another sense it's completely different from You Really Got Me. It's a more melodic song than You Really Got Me, and in that sense it's superior. In historical terms, undoubtedly You Really Got Me is more important because of the distortion, because of the sound of it, which is unique. Melodically and probably lyrically, All Day and All of the Night is better. I mean, it opens with the line, I'm not content to be with you in the daytime. And already there's a kind of frisson of irritability in Ray's songwriting, which wasn't really there on You Really Got Me, which is just, though, you really got me, endlessly going on. His songwriting starts to move a bit on All Day and All of the Night.
It was all a bit safe and polite, and people were talking about holding hands and, you know, kissing girls, and suddenly these guys were talking about it just was dangerous music, basically. They were talking about sex. And the record sounded like they were dangerous as well, which is a key. So the songs the subject matter wasn't just kind of deliberately risque. The actual sound of the records reflected what they were talking about.
You can get a taste of the hysteria that surrounded the Kinks and other British pop groups of the mid-60s when they crossed the Atlantic and took America by storm, from the highly successful American pop TV show Shindig in October 1965. Set Me Free confirmed that Ray Davies's ballads could become as successful as the hard-rocking songs that the band had started out with. It was a top 30 hit in America, while in the UK it was their fourth top 10 hit.
Set Me Free showed a completely different side of the Kinks and of Ray Davies's songwriting. Suddenly you realise that they didn't just do this in-your-face heavy rock thing. It's a sophisticated and subtle song, and it's a very kind of lazy, hazy song, which is, you know, they're associated with the two things: in-your-face rock music and this very, very subtle, atmospheric music that you know that really takes you. You can almost smell those records. It takes you into that time. It
was actually a rather interesting song. Ray pitched his vocal higher than usual, and I think his singing on that song is excellent. It showed, you know, certain aspects of him as a vocalist, which I hadn't realised before that point. And it was a good old single, and it did restore them to the top 10, and it was equally successful in the States.
I think it demonstrated that there was more to Ray's songwriting than just the riff-based songs that they'd produced earlier. I think Tired of Waiting was the first one in this direction, which I really loved. I really loved that song when it came out. And then Set Me Free had a similar feel to it. And then, of course, it moved on to See My Friend. So it was all getting a bit more thoughtful. There was more to listen to in the lyrics. And the songs themselves have got more of a melody.
Set Me Me Free, I suppose, was a very early indication that there was much more to Ray Davies than met the eye, much more to his songwriting than met the ear. The lyric was similar in a way to another song called See My Friends. The feeling of it was, perhaps not the lyric, but the feeling of the song. It was something not quite rock and roll, not quite heavy metal, not quite blues, not folk rock. Little aspects of all those kind of things were in Set Me Free. And some of the lyrics were an indication that there were cleverer things to come.
Who'll Be the Next in Line, the second song from the Kinks' Shindig show, was only ever released as the B-side of a single in Britain, but in America it was a top 40 hit in its own right. Guitar fans might notice the Gibson Flying V guitar that Dave Davies plays. It's one that he found lying at the back of a shop in Hollywood where they recorded the TV show. The Flying V became a popular guitar for rock guitarists in the 70s, but in 1965 they were exceedingly rare, and Dave was one of the first guitarists to use one back in Britain.
Who'll Be the Next in Line is quite a weird track to have such big success in America because it doesn't sound like a Kinks single. It literally looks like it's on a different level artistically to everything else they were doing at that time. I find it quite puzzling that was a success in America, because also in America, be that then or now, everything has to be obvious and in your face, and that record isn't obvious or in your face, whereas if you look at what the Kinks have been doing around that period of the early to mid 60s, you know, those records are kind of undeniable. You know, they're just in your face. You never get bored of hearing them because they've got such amazing hooks.
We'll be the next in line. We'll be the next in line for heartaches. We'll make the same mistakes I made over you. There'll be no use inside. We'll be the next in line for you.
Who'll Be the Next in Line is an interesting example of a song that was a B-side in the UK, and already there's this division between how the Kinks are seen in the UK and how they're seen in America. Now, given it's a B-side, you know it's not likely to be as strong as one of Ray's A-sides, but as it turned out, it was a pretty good song. But it was a very cynical song. It was the most vituperative lyric that Ray had produced up until that time. It's almost quite misogynistic in parts. The show when they did it, you could actually see Ray scowling, and there's Dave Davies there with his Flying V guitar, which is up to his waist, and his crotch is very prominent in those shots.
Unfortunately, the Kinks' initial success in America proved to be short-lived. Problems with managers, promoters and producers during their first tour of the States resulted in them being banned from playing in America for the next 3 years. One song that suffered particularly badly in America as a result of the Kinks' ban from going over there to play was Waterloo Sunset, which never even made the American charts, although it was a #2 hit in Britain in 1967 and remains one of the best known of all Kinks songs.
People so busy make me feel dizzy. Taxi lights shine so bright.
Waterloo Sunset is a slow, lazy-sounding ballad that sums up Ray Davies' genius for writing catchy melodies, and using his lyrical skills and powers of observation to write a brief but memorable storyline about Terry and Julie, who meet for a romantic tryst beneath the less-than-romantic Waterloo Bridge crossing the River Thames. The intrinsic charm of the song comes across in any era, as the unplugged-style acoustic version performed years later clearly shows.
Dirty old river, must you keep rolling, flowing into the night?
This particular song, which failed in America, of course, and only reached #2 here, scandalously in my opinion, it should have been #1 for a month or two, is up there with anything that Lennon wrote for the Beatles, or any of the best songs that have been written about a place, and to a lesser degree a time. It evokes London in the same way that Penny Lane and In My Life evoke Liverpool for the Beatles. It's a beautiful melody, deceptively simple, only 3 chords apart from the descending scale in the verse. And the lyrics just conjure up that lovely image of the Waterloo station and the London skyline, really. I think the dome of St Paul's and perhaps a yellow-orange sunset behind it.
Every day I look at the world from my window. Chilly, chilly is evening time. Waterloo sunsets
Waterloo Sunset is not only Ray Davies's finest moment as a songwriter, I think it is the finest pop single of all time. It's like a heavyweight book distilled into a 3-minute pop single. And normally if you try and get too literate and do too much in the pop format, you fall on your face, because pop is essentially an ephemeral genre. It's an ephemeral thing that's not meant to last. We're not meant to be analysing it 40 years later. It's not really, it wasn't designed, it was designed as entertainment. It wasn't designed as a sort of intellectual pursuit. And yet, Waterloo Sunset reveals itself over time.
It's a kind of song that illustrates again the hybrid ability that Ray Davies has to couple something of Noel Coward, something of George Formby, something of Randy Newman, something of Ray Davies. You know, he has a unique capability to encapsulate the real heart of Englishness in his song, what it is to be English, what it is to be English in a particular circumstance, a particular section of the class society of the time. And he writes from that kind of perspective, and it makes him very interesting historically when you look back at it 40 years later.
Waterloo sunset, I am in paradise.
It works very well when Ray does it unplugged, and in his shows it's always a crowd puller, and it's just a great song. I think the minimalist version is always going to be the best in that song, because it's highly emotive song, highly melodic, and he once described it as a painting. I mean, later Ray would write songs that were attempting to connect with a sense of place and fail, but on Waterloo Sunset it's all there. I mean, it does conjure everything that he wanted to conjure in that song, both melodically, musically and lyrically.
Waterloo sunsets fine.
Undoubtedly the most famous Kinks song of them all, Lola, was a #2 hit in the UK in the summer of 1970. It was also something of a revival for the band, who hadn't had a top 10 hit for the previous 2 years. In addition, Lola revived the group's fortunes in America by becoming a top 10 hit there as well. When the Kinks played the song in concert, Ray Davies would frequently let the audience take over and sing the song themselves while he conducted them. On this version, he performs the song solo with just a piano accompaniment, but it still retains all the vigour of the original.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes just like a cherry cola. C-O-L-A cola.
Lola was definitely a resurgence for the Kinks. They'd had a quiet period, whether it was a result of some of the fighting that was going on, whether it was a result of Ray not simply being able to come up with the hits at that period in time, I don't know. But Lola was a massive hit in 1970. It was something very different in the sense that it was quite a risque record for someone to write at that time.
Well, I'm not dumb, but I can't understand why she walked like a woman but talked like a man. Oh my Lord, la 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 la.
The appeal of Lola is principally because it's such an easy sing-along. It's a very catchy little song. Again, it's very simple. Its lyrics are really easy. Hey, Lola, Jerry Cola, you know, it all rhymes along. But it's just a sing-along. It's a simple sing-along. It's another three-quarter. It's another three-chord sing-along. Ray had a knack at writing those kinds of songs. I think it followed in the tradition of dedicated follower of fashion in a way, which was also a kind of a sing-along. And to a degree, Late Sunny Afternoon, you know, that was also kind of sing-alongish. He went through a period of these kind of songs which had rousing choruses, and he got the audience singing along. He liked that kind of thing on stage. He'd encourage it. And Lola was the easiest to do that too.
It's almost a novelty record. It's a great story. It's about a transvestite and a boy becoming a man. I don't think Lola is the song that real Kinks fans would pick out as one of their favourites. It may be the Kinks' biggest record commercially, and Lola is not one of the songs that I listen to all the time. You know, I find it almost slightly grating, actually, that song. You know, it's a nice song, but it's you know, it's just a bit too music hall, a bit too novelty for me.
Girls will be boys and boys will be girls. It's a mixed up, muddled up, shook up world, except my Lord. La 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 la.
It was a very popular song in a sense because it brought them back. It got to #1 in the New Musical Express and was their first hit in a couple of years. It was a novelty song as much as anything else, but it did have, you know, a great riff and was a great song to do in concert because everybody would join in and Ray would get the audience to join in the Lola chant. And it came at a crucial time of their career. It was right at the end of the 60s. It could have been that their career was over in a sense because the hits had dried up, and it gave them a real boost, I think, that song, and helped them, you know, get over the hump of the 60s and into a new era, and so that they could recreate themselves again.
Well, I left home just a week before. I'd never ever kissed a woman before. Lola smiled to me by the hair and said, "Dear boy, I'm gonna make you a man." Well, I'm not the world's most masculine man. I know what I am. Glad I'm a man. So Lord, la 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 la. La 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 la. Lola, la 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 la. La 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 la.
For much of the 70s, the Kinks struggled to live up to the reputation they'd established in the 60s. For a while, it seemed as if they were ill-equipped to cope with the musical changes of the 70s, particularly when Ray Davies had a tendency to try and turn each Kinks album into a theatrical concept. But even if the standard of their albums often suffered as a result, there was always a sprinkling of songwriting gems from Ray Davies.
There are stars in every city, in every house and on every street. And if you walk down Hollywood Boulevard, their names are written in concrete.
The concert footage, when we look at it now, almost looks, well, it's not, I was going to say kitsch, but I'm not even sure it's that. It just looks a bit odd. You know, there's Ray swanning round often in a bow tie, They're all trying to be desperately very colourful. These people weren't trained as actors. They didn't quite know what they were supposed to do. They were just dressing up and having fun. It was like messing around in the costume department for many of them, I think. And what started as fun became very, very, very tiresome after a while. They had great fun touring for a while, but they weren't a rock band anymore. You know, suddenly it was this sort of theatre troupe going around.
I think they were reaching too far artistically, you know, and so yeah, I think those concept albums were definitely a hindrance to their career in commercial terms. But I think Ray Davies had seen what had happened with all of his so-called serious peers who were very much operating in the LP format. Ray Davies was known as the guy that made brilliant singles, and yeah, I think they very much hindered their career actually, and I think in the end what happened was they lost their momentum, or at least their perceived momentum.
There really wasn't so much a place for the Kinks within that context, and the Kinks became very much a vehicle for Ray Davies' theatrical pursuits, which some found to be rather indulgent, not least his brother, who was incredibly sidelined. I mean, there you have Dave Davies, the embodiment of the kind of hard rock, heavy metal rock god guitarist, and he's playing amateur dramatic society style musicals on stage. I mean, he was not happy at all, and the other members of the group weren't happy.
Suffered and struggled for fame.
One gem is Celluloid Heroes from 1972. The lyrics of the song became the title of the album they were recording at the time. Everybody's in showbiz, everybody's a star. The song itself deals with the fragile nature of fame revolving around the iconic film stars who become immortalised on the sidewalk of Hollywood Boulevard, and manages to be both sensitive and sentimental at the same time.
Rudolph Valentino looks very much alive, and he looks up ladies' dresses as they sadly pass him by.
By the time Celluloid Heroes came out, the Kinks were no longer a singles group. They'd evolved into an albums group, as many did from the 60s. And it just needed a push. It could have been a hit. If an enterprising DJ had really plugged it to death in the UK or something, it needed somebody like that to be playing it every breakfast morning at 7 till 9. That probably would have done the trick, but alas not. But it was a strong album track, and it made more palatable some of Ray's theatrical stuff at the time. I mean, people probably bought the album Everybody's in Showbiz just to get that Celluloid Heroes, because everybody knew it was a great song.
Well, you can see all the stars as you walk down Hollywood Boulevard. Some that you recognize, some that you hardly even heard of. People who work, suffered and struggled for fame.
Celluloid Heroes is a good song and not a great single. You know, it's got some fantastic imagery in there. You know, it's just another Ray Davies song. It's certainly, I would struggle to hum you that tune. But of course it was the calling card from that album.
It doesn't matter who you are, but those who are successful, be always on your guard.
It shows just how clever Ray is and the way that he writes. And it's another example of a song that is tinged with bitterness, but there's a humour in there as well. I mean, there's the little remarks about Bela Lugosi biting you back if you tread on his footprints on the boulevard, and references to Mickey Rooney, who would probably smile if you trod on him, and then please don't tread on Marilyn because she should have been made of steel and iron but was only made of flesh and blood. I mean, it's a lovely little line, it's a lovely little kind of simile. And he always managed to tinge his bitterness with humour and a kind of sweetness that was took the edge off it becoming maybe just something that was perhaps a little spiteful at times. You know, he took the edge off spite like that. is a wry way of looking at things. Sometimes you can see it in the curl of his lip.
Walking along a crowded street, I see thousands of faces before me. Then I see a face that I used to know long ago in my life story.
No More Looking Back comes from the Kinks' 1976 album Schoolboys in Disgrace, the latest in a series of themed conceptual albums. Given that many of these albums had unashamedly indulged in nostalgia, 3 of them even had the word preservation in the title, No More Looking Back could be construed as ironic, to say the least. But, in fact, the song has a sense of purpose, poignantly confronting the past and then offering a way forward. This is underlined by an accessible, contemporary musical feeling, making it one of Ray Davies's stronger songs from the mid-70s.
I think the interesting thing about a song like No More Looking Back is that I had to remind myself what it was. And that misses the point in the Kinks, is that those songs are indelibly etched on your memory and on your heart. They're the soundtrack to your life. And you know, I would say I know virtually every Kinks record that they made until the late 70s. And yet, the songs we're talking about now, I really had to go back and remind myself what they were. I think that's not a good sign.
No more looking back, no more living in the past.
I'm not sure that No More Looking Back was actually a song about I'm not going back into the past for inspiration about my songs. I think No More Looking Back is more a song about a love affair that's gone wrong. And just as your mother advises you that it's not a good idea if you've stubbed your toe when you got out of bed in the morning to go back and do it all over again, he's saying, I'm not going to start going back and reliving the sadness and the upset and the emotional distress that I had when I went through this love affair.
By the time we get towards the end of the theatrical years in the mid-70s, the Kinks recorded Schoolboys in Disgrace. Now on its face, this looks to be the worst of the lot, because on the front is a boy getting spanked with his trousers down. And this is an entire album about school days. And you think, no, please, this can't work at all. But in actual fact, the songs in it were pretty good. Dave was back more prominently. The songs weren't so, old-fashioned music hall style. It wasn't as vaudevillian. It was actually quite hard rocking. There were good songs in it. There were, songs like Jack the Idiot Dunce, and No More Looking Back was another song on it. And that No More Looking Back was, perhaps put the lid on everything, really. It was a time for the Kinks to change, and No More Looking Back, intentionally or otherwise, predicted what would happen next, which was a completely new phase in the Kinks' career.
In 1977, the Kinks' career was rejuvenated when they signed to Arista, an American record label run by Clive Davis, whose track record of developing artists into superstars was legendary within the music business. The Kinks' first album with Clive Davis was Sleepwalker, which reached number 21 in the American charts, the first time the band had made the US album charts for 6 years. You can see the effect this had on the Kinks on this performance from the Saturday Night Live TV show they did soon after the Sleepwalker album was released, playing the title track, which was apparently inspired by Ray Davies's frequent bouts of insomnia. While the original version of the song is skillfully arranged around an insidiously catchy riff, in the TV studio, in front of a small but enthusiastic audience, the Kinks deliver a rowdy, punked-up version, with Ray and Dave Davis together in the spotlight once again, playing off each other the way they had done back in the 60s, channeling all their competitive instincts into playing the music.
Well, everybody got problems, buddy, I got mine. But when midnight comes around, I start to lose my mind. When the sun puts out the light, I join the creatures of the night. Oh yeah.
In terms of a career development, signing to Arista was probably a good move. Arista Records was headed by Clive Davis, who'd been famous record company executive. He'd headed CBS, or Columbia as they're known in America, and was widely known and respected. And he knew all about promotion. He knew all about how to get his acts, records in the charts, and he managed it with the Kinks, so all power to him. So it was a good move from a commercial point of view. Whether it was a good move creatively or not is debatable. It is generally perceived that Ray's muse had somehow drifted away by this point. But nevertheless, the songs he was writing, a lot of them, went down with American audiences. And this is what the band probably needed at this stage in their career. If this had not happened, they'd probably have split up and Ray would have been making solo albums for the last 20 years.
They'd done the theatrical albums, they hadn't been successful. It was now time for a rethink. And I think, you know, Clive Davis arrived at the perfect time for the Kinks, really. He had a plan, and the plan was to, you know, get the Kinks back and reinvent them for America, in a sense. Get them doing what they used to do, which is, you know, straight ahead rock record. And that's what Sleepwalker was. It wasn't the greatest record in the world. In fact, somewhat contrived, I always thought. It was a soulless, sterile record in many respects, which is probably why it was successful, because at the time there was a lot of AOR records that were successful in America, and it kind of fitted in. And I think everybody was just eminently relieved to see the Kinks playing rock songs again.
The particular clip that you have, I think, is very good, because I'm sure it's the Sleepwalker. With the two brothers are very close together on the stage. And is it Sleepwalker? I think it's Sleepwalker where Dave plays some very good guitar work. He's allowed to cut loose a little bit with his guitar. And the two of them together, you know, you really feel. You sometimes feel with the Kinks, and it's true with Sleepwalker, that you're looking at a duo with other musicians. You sometimes feel that you're looking at Ray Davis as a solo artist with a backing band. You seldom look at the Kinks, and apart from the first two songs they ever did, You Really Got Me and All Day and All of the Night, as a group. I think they started to splinter very early, and Ray doesn't fit into that category very easily. He's not a group individual. I'm sure if it were not for the fact that he's been playing with Dave for all these years, the Kinks would not have gone on.
When nighttime comes, I start to creep. I prowl around when you're fast asleep. Walk around on my tippy toes, then I get into places that nobody knows. I'm always around if you want to meet. You can find me on almost every street. I'll even call you on the telephone. I'll even come to your home if you're ever alone.
The Kinks are very pleased to play Saturday Night Live, particularly, you know, given the problems they'd had in the mid-60s as a result of them being banned, etc., from America. To suddenly be on primetime TV was quite an achievement for them. And this came at a time when they were on a roll. You know, that they got the full backing of Arista Records. Clive Davis was quite a prominent figure in the record industry at the time. And I think there was a sense in America that hey, you know, we've got the Kinks now, which they had. I mean, the Kinks were fast evolving into, of all things, an American group.
Life on the Road is another song from the Sleepwalker album. To begin with, it sounds as if it could have come from one of the Kinks' earlier albums in the 70s, as it sets out on a wistful tour of London, name-dropping places like Abbey Road and Pimlico.
It was always my ambition to see Piccadilly, ramble and roam around Soho, Pimlico and Savile Row, and walk down the Abbey Road.
But suddenly the song switches gear into a romantic, upbeat and infectious rocker that reflects the band's revitalised spirit, going back to the spark that originally inspired them while acknowledging the musical experience they've gained along the way.
And I left for a life of my own. I left for a life on the road.
Life on the Road was an interesting song. It was a song that kicked off Sleepwalker. Good solid rock song for the Kinks. Life on the Road, it's a perfect song to play live, of course, because it was about life on the road. Somewhat calculated, I'm afraid. I mean, it's got a lot of London references in it. It's got Parade Street and Pimlico, and I'm from Pimlico, so I love the fact that they name dropped it. But you need only compare it to something like Waterloo Sunset, or some of the songs on Village Green. There's a tremendous sense of place in those records. They try to conjure up what it means to be in Waterloo, what Waterloo evokes to them. In this one, it's just a travelogue. They're just name dropping the places. It's almost like, hey, we can still mention Pimlico in a song, therefore, we're still spiritually connected. But there's no sense of connection in the lyrics. They're just names.
I think by that point they were very aware of what they'd done before, and some of it was. I think some of it was, they were very keen to be seen to be keeping up with things, and then I also think they had half an eye on the past, so they sort of knew what had made Ray Davies's songs successful in the first place. But again, to me, they're not particularly memorable songs, and that's the key. The fact that if I didn't ever hear any of these songs again, it wouldn't upset me.
Give me life on the road. I want life on the road. Give me life on the road. Well, when I arrived in Houston, I was little more than a child, and I didn't know then that the dives and dance would be so vulgar, wicked and wild. Mama always told me city ladies were body and bold, so I searched out a day to catch a kissable lady, but all that I caught was a cold. Cause I was stuck up, city women didn't notice me walk by.
It's the sort of my life as a tortured artist sort of lyric, which Ray does so well. It's also a very good example of how good a guitarist actually Dave is, and how little credit he sometimes gets, because he's a very fine guitarist. He never puts himself out to be that, but he became much better as time went by. I mean, he started off as being a kind of the man who developed the sound, the power chord, the feedback, were all the things attributed to Dave Davies. But by the time we get to this period in the Kinks' development, in the late 70s, he's become a very good little lead guitarist, and he plays some very nice stuff on this particular song. And you see the brothers together as a unit, rather like a kind of Everly Brothers or Gallagher Brothers or something. You can see that they're a duo. And it does give you that impression that it's a duo with a band, which I sometimes feel that would not have happened if Ray had not had a brother in the band. By this time he probably would have been a solo singer-songwriter, just playing with different musicians.
When I'm living a life that I chose, living the life on the road.
It was a sop, really, and as was somewhat the Dave Davies's work on it. I mean, it wasn't a great riff. It wasn't a riff up there with the All Day and All the Nights or You Really Got Me's. But it was okay. It was just a solid, half-decent rock song, but still made you think without being too schoolmarmy about it. The Kinks can do better. You can write a better rock song than this, and you can write a better lyric than this. But I think everybody was happy because, rock and roll record, opening song, good for concert. Not a bad rock record for what it stands. Not particularly memorable. I can't imagine it being close to the top 20, 30, 40 even of Ray Davies songs, but it's there, and there's the footage of it for you to witness.
But I'm living the life that I chose, so I live out my life on the road. Give me life on the road, life on the road, life on the road, life on the road. I want life on the road, life on the road. Give me life on the road, yeah, yeah.
Misfits is the title track of the album that followed Sleepwalker in 1978. For many people, Misfits was actually a better Kinks album than Sleepwalker, with stronger songs, although this was not reflected by its chart placing in Britain or America.
You've been sleeping in a field, but you look real rested. You set out to outrage, but you can't get arrested.
Although the album wasn't a concept, the Misfits song certainly sets the scene for the rest of the album in a distinctively Kinks manner by introducing a whole bunch of dysfunctional characters. Ray Davies cleverly leaves some of the lyrical meanings dangling to keep the listener's attention. In the same way, the music and reflective mood of the song offered the chance for some clever instrumental embellishments, and Dave Davies shows a particularly deft touch towards the end of this version of Misfits, echoing the Spanish guitar motif that's on the original record.
Somehow you never go quite fit in. Though it's so cold outside, I know the summer's gonna come again. Because you know what they say, every dog has his day.
Well, I think the power of Misfits lay in the fact that, in one respect, it was a concept album. The concept of the misfit went through it all. But the great thing about it was that it wasn't an intentional concept album in the way that the early musical, vaudevillian albums like Preservation were. Misfits was almost concept by accident. And that's the best kind of concept, because it means that you're not straight-laced while you're doing it. But what you have is these songs which are kind of linked somewhat by theme throughout. And, that can result in a great record. I think very much that's probably how the Village Green Preservation Society evolved, which is their greatest achievement. So Misfits, in a way, was a throwback to that style of writing where you've got a unifying theme across a series of songs. And it means that the album, instead of being a disparate series of songs that just cobbled together, it actually had a certain unity of theme, and it worked. And they were decent songs. If they'd had a few stronger songs within it, it possibly could have even been a great Kinks album. It wasn't up there with the best of them, but it was okay, and it was a lot better and a lot more palatable than its predecessor, Sleepwalker.
The Misfits is almost a sort of autobiographical piece by Ray. He's always regarded himself as a misfit. He's always felt he was the man that didn't quite fit the mould of being a rock singer or being a star or being a show business celebrity. He's always thought of himself as a reclusive, hermetic character who shuts himself away from the limelight. And that is true to a large extent. He does, and he has done in his life for large periods, and I think he has to almost force himself out on the road.
It's okay, I think all of this stuff is okay, it's quite good. Must try harder, just like my school report. I just think this music it doesn't change anything by that point. They'd made their impact. Artistically, the big statements had been made, and by this point they'd made their best records. Their best days were behind them.
Every dog has his day. You're a misfit, afraid of yourself, so you run
From the late 70s, we fast forward to the mid-80s for Lost and Found. The song is a slow-moving ballad with a deceptively simple melody and an effortlessly addictive hook line. It's a song that could easily sound bland in the wrong hands, but Ray has the ability to get you engrossed in this story. This TV performance of the song strips away the synthesizers and steel drums on the original record and cuts to the heart of the song.
When the Kinks have to appear on TV in the late 70s or the mid 80s or whatever, they have to promote the record that they're promoting at the time. And so you have Lost and Found, not a particularly great track, but they're not going to go on TV and just do You Really Got Me. They're trying to sell a record. They've got a new album out, they're doing their best to promote it, and you know, they pluck out a song, not a great song, but it's okay. Again, you know, that's the state they were in at the time. There's no easy way around it. I mean, the Kinks always had problems when they were doing the theatrical work. The crowds were still shouting out rock and roll, which, you know, didn't help matters. And now they get into the mid-80s and people are going to see the Kinks because they're the Kinks.
When you're comparing things to Dead End Street and Waterloo Sunset and Sunny Afternoon, it's crap. But compared to most other bands, this is really good music. So this is all very much my degree. You cannot forget that. I just think by that point it was over. They should have stopped. If the Kinks had stopped in 1970, we would revere them in the same way that we revere the Beatles and the Stones and Led Zeppelin.
This is bigger than the mothers. It's gonna put us in our place. We're gonna say what really matters when we see that storm stares in the face.
To round off this look at the Kinks in performance, we'll finish with a medley of their greatest hits played live in front of the Saturday Night Live audience in 1977. They kick off with their sucker 1-2 punch of You Really Got Me and All Day and All of the Night, their first two classic hits, before slipping into A Well-Respected Man, a top 20 hit in America in 1966 that wasn't even released as a single in Britain, but was left to languish on an EP instead.
He gets up in the morning and he goes to work at night and he comes back home at 5:30, gets the same train every time.
From the steady rolling rhythm of A Well-Respected Man, it's an easy segue into Lola, which gradually picks up momentum, building into a raucous finale, which is something the Kinks always knew how to do.
You really got me going, you got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, you really got me now, you got me so I can't sleep at night. Yeah. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Oh yeah, you really got me now. Got me so I got the bad night. You really.
Well, I think when the Kinks did a medley, it's always a bit tacky doing a medley. You know, it's dismissive of it diminishes the records that they end up in a medley. You know, do one and do it well, but don't become a show band just trotting out your hits, which of course they did in one particular piece of footage, but. You know, I suppose for a TV audience it was stating their claim really. You know, here are 4 songs, aren't we great? You know, these are 4 hits, and you know, for everybody listening, it's like, oh wow, the Kinks, yeah, You Really Got Me, yeah, Well-Respected Man, what a great song that was.
There's always been a touch of the music hall about the Kinks. Some of the mid-60s songs, like Well-Respected Man, Dedicated Follower of Fashion, perhaps even Dead End Street, which verges on social comment, have got this thing about them where he's describing a particular personality of someone, specifically in The Well-Respected Man, where he's talking about the bourgeoisie middle-class bloke who gets up every day and goes to work at a desperately dull job in an insurance company or something like that, but deep down inside he wants to get his hands on the teenage girl next door, and that he wants a more exciting life, I think, but he's trapped. And there's a real bit of truth, I think, about that, about people that are trapped in dead-end jobs.
This is the first song in which he'd extended himself as a songwriter, and was writing about the middle classes in a way which he, probably never experienced before. And that came as a result of being managed by two stockbrokers, I always felt, Robert Wace and Grenville Collins. Their very names suggest much. They were a huge influence, I think, on his songwriting, because they brought him into a world, almost an aristocratic world as far as he was concerned, which he'd never seen before. And as a result, you do get songs like Well-Respected Man and Dedicated Follower of Fashion and Sunny Afternoon. And that's an area of Ray's songwriting that everybody loves. So it's good to see that represented in the record.
And he's all so good, and he's all so fine, and he's all so healthy in his body and his mind. He's a well-respected man about town, doing the best things so conservatively.
Well-Respected Man was the sort of around that period of Dedicated Follower of Fashion. It was a part of that kind of George Formby quality that he instilled in a lot of his work, and he took from that kind of musical concept. It's quite a camp little song in some ways, but again it's Ray's kind of take on the class system.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you read champagne and it tastes just like Coca-Cola. C-O-L-A-Cola.
Lola was the great showstopper. I mean, you could sing it for 15 minutes and nobody would complain, and just clap along to it and sing along to it. It's a chant, it doesn't have to be understood. You don't have to know what the theme of Lola is or the lyrics. You just sing along with Lola, and that's why it's so successful as a hit for all the Kinks around the world. They can play it anywhere, and it's probably one of their most accessible songs for that reason.
Well, I'm not dumb, but I can't understand why she walked like a woman with dark black hair. Oh my Lord, la 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 la.
I think a lot of the fans kind of enjoyed the relative sloppiness, if that's the right word for it, that the Kinks presented. They didn't expect the Kinks to be the sleek, cohesive machine that The Who and Led Zeppelin were. They kind of expected Ray to do something a bit silly, or maybe to break off a song in the middle of it or something, and something to go a bit wrong. It was all part of their charm.
They rocked. They were incendiary on stage. So, and I think they didn't put on a show in that kind of all singing, all dancing, great lighting shows. It was not Led Zeppelin. They rocked though. If you'd have seen them in the 60s, I'd give anything to have seen them then, because I bet they were fantastic. And you can see the footage of them now. They were a much better live band than the Beatles at all.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes just like a cherry cola. C-O-L-A cola. She walked up to me and she started to dance. I asked her her name, and in a dark brown voice she said Lola. L-O-L-A, Lola. La 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 Lola. Well, I'm not the world's most physical guy, but when she squeezed me tight, she nearly broke my spine. Oh my Lola, 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 Lola. Well, I'm not dumb, but I can't understand why she walked like a woman but talked like a man. Oh my Lola, Lola, Lola,